Alrighty, so it's been a long time since my last update, but I've got a very good reason for it, and oh boy, it's going to be spectacular. Stick around. Well, I finally did it and bought the lumber I needed to build Rice Yard, and finally get this railroad to its full-grown size and operating potential. Of course, one of the main challenges here is that Rice Yard takes up a lot of space, and I still needed to keep this room clear for band activities and normal life, that sort of thing. Thus, I put the whole affair on casters, much like the Atlas modules, albeit much larger ones that also feature a swivel lock as part of the brake system. And I built a large section to tilt sideways for storage along the wall. A side note about this, one of the lessons learned from building benchwork this way was that I had to account for the shifting center of gravity as the tabletop tilted. With the larger Atlas module as originally built, the table threatened to fall over when tilted because the load was shifted from the center line of the trolley off to one side. I eventually corrected this by moving the hinge point of the table closer to the center so that even when tilted upright, the table was properly balanced. These design changes were incorporated into the Rice Yard section as well. The smaller section ended up being small enough that tilting was not necessary, and its unusual shape actually allowed it to nest in with the other stored sections very nicely. And in the end, I only had to restrict a couple of feet at one end of the main room to accommodate all of this. So this kept the band happy. Next, it was time to lay track. I used Atlas Code 83 for this instead of microengineering, as it was to be a scenic staging yard with emphasis on operation, not detail. I made a wee change to the mainline end in order to follow the prototype track arrangement, and funneled it down to one arrival-departure track. This would be the first thing laid out, as it would at least get us as far out to the end of the CNS main as possible, and then the yard tracks could be added in their own good time. Now, there were to be a lot of tracks crossing the joints of these things, and I wasn't about to remove and insert joiner rails for all of those tracks every time the layout was put away. So I decided to butt joint the track ends. This is always a bit risky, but I've been having a lot of luck with it on the Atlas modules with 3 and 4 tracks over a gap, so adding more seemed feasible as long as I was careful about it. Of particular note is that most of the tracks cross this module joint at an angle, so I took the simplest route to making this joint. Note the number of track pins. I basically tacked down every single thing along both sides of the joint while the sections were clamped together, and then cut the rails with a razor saw. Is it clunky? Yes. However, a lot of this goes away when scenery and ballast are in place, as the scenery glue locks everything together. Finally, with the main in place, I dropped feeder wires and installed a bus line with the attendant Anderson connectors between sections, and I was all ready to get some new turnouts and start the yard throw. And then this happened.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
So, no, we didn't get kicked out because we forgot to pay the rent or I spent too much money on the model railroad or anything like that. Very simply, the landlord sold the property. The new owners decided that they would rather refurbish the place and flip the house, so we were given about a month to get out. So this was to be the first test of this railroad's portability, its ability. I built it in sections. This is the danger of living in a rental. If you build a train layout, at some point you might have to go. And so we were faced with this situation. So I took everything apart, got to the business, removing the joiner rails and everything like that. One little trick I did when removing the joiner rails, I made a little cardboard placard for each one of the section joints in the eventuality that if I could put the entire railroad as is without having to rebuild anything into the new space, then everything would go together nice and fluid and clean. So I made a little cardboard strip for each joint, marked its location, and then laid the joiner rails in order on there so everything would go back together exactly as it came apart. So once that was done, then it was a matter of going around, pulling the individual sections out. I always start with that corner where Weicker Transfer was because everything else can then come out from there. And then the 8-foot brewery section is the last piece to come out. So I got everything packed up and wrapped. all the modules that were roughly the same length, like I have a lot of 6-footers there, they were actually set scenery side to scenery side. And then I bolted some plywood end plates to them so that it effectively made its own little case out of these 2 modules, and all the delicate stuff was on the inside where nothing could mess with it. Wrapped it up in plastic, so those were ready to ship. Box up all the structures. The rolling stock is largely in its boxes. Everything cased up pretty nicely. So, but then we had to find a new place to live, and boy howdy did we score on that one. And that will be the subject of my next video, but I'll give you a little preview here. This is going to be a game changer for this railroad. I'm going to lose Rice Yard and the Atlas Metals section in all of this, but what I stand to gain is going to be far superior to anything I could have imagined for this railroad. And I don't have to ditch the theme, and I don't have to rebuild the entire thing, so that's good. I get to keep a lot of the stuff that I've been working on, especially with scenes like West Metro Petro being largely completed and working on Pioneer Sand and Gravel. I get to keep that. Myrtle Place and the coal unloader. We're changing its operational style a little bit, but the coal unloader and all that's going to be there. So anyway, stay tuned. There are some great changes coming for this railroad, and I'm looking forward to telling you about it. So, glad to end this video on a high note, even though it could have been soul-crushing news. I mean, this could have been the end of the railroad. It's just it's a new beginning. The Associated Railroads version 3. So, and this will probably be the last version. If I have to pick up and move again, odds are I'm probably just going to scrap the entire concept and do Colorado and Southern Railroad proper. But we've got plenty of time before that day comes. So, sorry it took so long to update you guys, but now you know why. I've been extremely busy. So, thanks for watching. See you on the next video.
I think we've just begun. A new start to something. A point in time undone. That is yet to reach an ending. I feel like I'm the one who has to tell the story. Tell the story. Walk the birds around in search of the calling. And seemed at first to climb, that always ends in falling, falling. You're eaten by the sun and swallowed by its glory. Still we travel on the road that no one's been beyond. We stay true